my name is Caitlin Bandy, and this is my channel Bandy's Books, and today we are here to talk about my July TBR, and I am very excited for my July TBR, and so is Domino. She is currently in the process of rioting. So I'm going to put her down now, and if you see her running in and out of the video, it's just because she is in total chaos mode at the moment. We think she is between 5 and 6 weeks, and this is when they start to explore everything. So she is naturally climbing up everything, books included. So July. What am I going to be reading in July? The answer is I have way too much picked out as per usual, but I think I'm even a little bit more extra this month than typical. And that's because in July, I usually give myself a free month. I create a really big TBR of like the books that I'm super excited to read. And I had a lot of them. So I have a very big stack of books. So aside from things that I have picked out, I have some books left to read for this round of the BookTube Prize. I have 2 buddy reads, and I have a couple books for book clubs that I am participating in. So it's a lot off the bat. And then I picked out all of the books on my shelves that I was really super excited about. Most of these are going to be new releases. Some of them are not necessarily new releases, but are new to me books for various reasons. And I am just really excited about them. So I'm going to do my best. So that's what we're going to do today, talk about a huge variety of books. So first up, I received Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is an actual signed copy, and this is sincerely one of the books that I was most excited for this year. This is the 3rd book in the Between Earth and Sky series, the first book being Black Sun. And I have been anticipating this book since I started the series. This is maybe my favorite fantasy series ever, and I cannot wait to find out how it ends. I'm also so excited that this ARC is signed. I honestly have never received a signed ARC before, but this was just like the highlight of my day when I received it. And look how beautiful this cover is too. This may be the first thing that I read in July. Then I have a couple buddy reads. I have Trust by Hernan Diaz. I'm going to be reading this with Jamie over at Jamie Kate. We both are trying to work through like some of the chunkier books on our shelves, some of the books that have been sitting for a while. And this is one of the books that we had talked about recently where like we both had it sitting for a while and have been wanting to get to it. This is set in 1920s New York, and I believe it follows a couple Wall Street tycoons. I hear mixed reviews of this one, so I'm curious to see how I feel about it. Then I have Birnam Wood by Eleanor Catton. So I am buddy reading this with Catherine from Raspberry Reads. And we recently like tossed around the idea of doing a buddy read, and she sent me a list of books that she was interested in. And I was like, oh, perfect, let's do Birnam Wood. So last year I read, I want to say like, oh, actually there's a bookmark in there, so I know exactly how much I read. I read the first 75 pages of this book, and I was really enjoying it. I didn't think it was badly written. It was pretty engaging and interesting. And then for some reason I set it down and just never picked it back up. And again, it's not because it was boring or I didn't like it, but I just got distracted by other things. This is an eco thriller, and I feel like this is going to provide us with a ton of things to talk about. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one with her as well. Next up, we're going to be talking about some classics and some retellings. So I am not the most well-versed booktuber in terms of classics. I've read most of the classics that are typical within your school years, and then I didn't really read too much in terms of classics post-school, just because I felt like a lot of the education around classics that I received in school was kind of dry and dusty and didn't make them very exciting. So as an adult, I am trying to slowly dip my toes into the classics genre. I still won't say that it's my favorite, but I am finding that I'm enjoying more classics than I expected. And recently there's been a couple like classic retellings that I'm really interested in reading, but I wanted to refresh on the original before I read the retelling. So this month I'm going to be doing 2 of them. So I have 1984 by George Orwell, and I have Julia by Sandra Newman. This one is a retelling of 1984 from the perspective of Julia. So if you're unfamiliar with 1984, this is a classic. It's set in the year 1984, and it's the story of one man's nightmare odyssey through a world ruled by warring states and a power structure that controls not only information, but also individual thought and memory. So this is like that nightmare scenario of where there's like super big government and is incredibly invasive in every individual's life. So I am really looking forward to reading this one. I actually remember really liking this one in school. I think this was one of the more interesting classics that I remember reading, and I've been hearing rave reviews of Julia. So I'm gonna do these back to back, and then I'm gonna compare and contrast. I may actually just do a video specifically on this. And then the second classic and retelling that I have is The Adventures of Huck Finn by Mark Twain and James by Percival Everett. I feel like you cannot go anywhere on bookish social media right now without hearing about this book. I picked it up a couple months through Aardvark when they featured it, and and I was really excited because I have yet to have read a book by Percival Everett, but I hear, again, rave reviews. So this is an author I definitely want to explore. It's been a very long time since I've read Huck Finn. I want to say that I read it in school at some point, but I feel like I was fairly young. So I definitely want to refresh on this. I know that it's not necessary to refresh on this to understand this book, but I just feel like sometimes you miss things if you don't have the original and then go through the retelling. So I'm going to read this one, and then I'm going to pick up James by Percival Everett. Same thing, I'm going to read these two back to back, and then I will probably vlog that experience as well, just because I find it super interesting to compare and contrast the two. Then I have a whole stack of little books. Some of these are just like meditations on different subjects. Some of these are short story collections. One of these is poetry, but all of them are going to probably be fairly fast reads. So I'm just going to go through these real quick. So I have Notes on Grief by Chimamanda Ngozie Adiche. So this is just a quick meditation on grief. This is about the brutal summer of 2020 when Adiche lost her beloved father and community member to an unexpected death from kidney failure. This is very short, and you can see it's a really small book. It's only 67 pages long, so I imagine I'll be able to get through this one pretty quickly. Then another book that I have been so excited about, I found this recently in a little free library in my trip across the Southwest, and I nearly screamed. I could not believe it. That's Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Bazterrica. I don't know how anyone at this point is unfamiliar with this book because everybody has been talking about it, but this is a translated fiction out of Argentina. And the concept is that there is infectious disease that contaminates all sources of meat. And so in order for humanity to survive, humans start farming other humans for meat. And I think we have a main character who is working with those farmed humans and comes across a moral conundrum. I've heard that this is brutal, gross, and disturbing, among other things, but as a chef and as somebody who works in the food industry, I'm super interested in this particular type of dystopian scenario. I can't wait to hear what this has to say. I think that this is like an argument towards veganism as well, and I think that that's a really interesting subject, so I'm looking forward to getting into this. Then I have World of Wonders by Aimee Nezhukumatathil. I'm so sorry if I butchered that last name. That's a hard one for me to pronounce. This is Aimee's like kind of a memoir meditation on nature, her life growing up. This is a book that was recommended to me on a trip in Denver, and the bookseller that recommended it to me just said that she related to this a lot. Each chapter is themed with a different animal or a different piece of nature, which I find really cool. So like the first one is catalpa trees. We have a chapter on peacocks. There's another one on whale sharks, axolotls. It's just cool how the theme of nature goes throughout this book. But I do think that it meditates more on her individual life than specifically nature. So I've heard really good things about this. It's another short book. I'm sure I'll get through this one pretty quickly. Then I have Chlorine Sky by Mahogany Browne. So this is a novel, but it's written entirely in verse. So you can see that each page is basically a poem. I believe that this is like a coming of age story about a young woman and some of the emotional turmoil that she is going through with her best friend. I picked this up recently in one of my local bookstores here in Las Vegas, and I haven't read like a ton of poetry. It's a really weak area for me, and so I'm trying to slowly work in a little bit more poetry here and there. Again, this will be another quick read. It's 170 or so pages, but it's again all in verse, so it should move pretty quickly. And then I have Floating in a Most Peculiar Way by Luis Chute-Sokei. So this is Luis's memoir. He is a child of the diaspora. He was born in a now defunct country of Biafra. He arrives in Jamaica as a toddler and is completely displaced. Eventually, he joins his mother in Inglewood, Los Angeles, and he is thrust into a completely new world. This sounds really fascinating. This is set in Southern California. So for me, I'm drawn to the fact that this gentleman moved to 3 different countries, that experience of like getting to know the world, that sense of displacement, the coming of age themes. And then for me, like the setting in Southern California is very familiar. The area in which this takes place is also very familiar. I think he's a little bit older than I am, but there's a lot of overlap in some of our experiences. Just generally, I think there's a lot to love in this memoir, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I also really like the cover design on this. Another book that I am super, super excited about, I jumped for joy when I saw this the other day in a local bookstore, is Friday Black by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you will know that Chain Gang All-Stars was my favorite book of 2023. I thought Adjei-Brenyah's writing was brilliant. I love the way that he sharply critiqued the incarceration system here in the United States and the lack of humanity in it. I thought it said a lot of really important things. This is his debut collection of short stories, and I think that these short stories also are going to be focusing on the topic of race and injustice. I've heard rave reviews about this book, so I am dying to read this one. This is another short read. We're barely at 200 pages, and you can see it's a pretty small book, so I think that I'll probably burn through this one really quick as well. And then I have Milk Blood Heat by Dantiel W. Moniz. So this is set in Florida and delves into the ordinary worlds of young girls, women, and men who find themselves confronted by extraordinary moments of violent personal reckoning. Sounds fantastic. And the last of my small book collection is Grown Ups by Marie Aubert. This was a book that was recommended to me around Christmas time. I did a little indie bookstore crawl through San Diego, and one of the booksellers at La Playa Books recommended this. She said it was witty and funny, and one of those books that was just like so enjoyable she couldn't put it down. She burned through it like in one day. I can see why. It's 163 pages. It's pretty small. And it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. It looks like it's going to be exploring sibling rivalry and modern motherhood from one of Norway's rising stars. Oh, and I forgot, this is a translated fiction as well. Originally written in Norwegian, recently translated to English. I've been making a significant effort this year to read more translated fiction, and I'm doing really good with that. So this will definitely meet that goal. And this might be the first book I'm reading this year that was translated from Norwegian as well. So I'm excited about that. All right, now on to my full-size books. And there's a lot of them. I'm going to go through them really fast just because I don't want to keep you here for, 3 hours talking about books. Not that I can't talk for 3 hours about books. Next up, I have Starter Villain by John Scalzi. This is a recent recommendation, and I have never read Scalzi before, but I've had Kaiju Preservation Society on my radar for quite a while. This book sounds really wild and interesting, and I've been kind of really enjoying those books that feel like a bad acid trip. This is like a book that I feel like I can't adequately explain. We have a main character named Charlie whose life is going nowhere fast. His long lost uncle Jake dies and leaves his supervillain business complete with island volcano lair to Charlie. But becoming a supervillain isn't everything it's cracked up to be, and now Jake has enemies. It's up to Charlie to win the war that his uncle started against a league of supervillains, but with unionized dolphins, hyper-intelligent talking spy cats, and a terrifying hench person at his side, going bad is starting to look pretty good. So that sounds wild. I'm particularly interested in the cat theme, so hopefully this will be a fun read for me. Then I have Slow Noodles by Chanta Newman. This is a book that I picked up in my trip across the Southwest at Books on the Bosque, and this is a book that I'm really excited about. It is a Cambodian memoir of love, loss, and family recipes. So this is about being a Cambodian refugee in Vietnam and then Thailand, and the loss of family, loss of culture, and what one has to do to survive. It is interspersed with recipes, which is particularly interesting to me. I don't know as much about Cambodian cuisine as I would like, so I'm hoping that this will actually be somewhat of a learning experience for me as well. And I have considered maybe like reading this and cooking some of the recipes at the same time and doing like some sort of vlog about that, just because I find that concept really interesting. I think that this is going to be a really good memoir. I'm really looking forward to getting into it. Then I have It's Not Hysteria, Everything You Need to Know About Your Reproductive Health But Were Never Told by Dr. Karen Tang. So as someone who has recently gone through a lot of women-specific health-related issues, I feel like this book is super important. So I had a hysterectomy recently. Prior to that, I had suffered with endometriosis for years. I feel like because of that, I have had to do an absurd amount of learning how to advocate for myself, learning how to read medical research, how to find specialists, how to educate doctors and medical professionals, etc. Because the lack of understanding in terms of issues that relate to the reproductive organs of women is just so poor. General practitioners know next to nothing. OBGYNs often don't specialize in disease, they specialize in birthing. So you're dealing with a doctor who's like, yeah, maybe I know a tiny bit about that, but they're not reading the up-to-date research, they're not continually educating themselves on these subjects. And so you receive care that is inadequate and at times negligent. I can't tell you how many times in my own experiences with endometriosis, I had doctors basically tell me there was nothing that they could do for me and that I should stop being so hysterical. I should just have a baby to cure my endometriosis. I should do things that are detrimental to my health to cure my endometriosis, which by the way, there is actually no cure. So all of those things are BS. So this book, what I really appreciate about this is this covers every single aspect of women's reproductive health. It talks about puberty, it talks about periods, it talks about PCOS, endometriosis, adenomyosis, fibroids, it talks about fertility, childbirth, how to recover from childbirth, and it talks about menopause. And it does so in a really detailed, thoughtful way. Another thing that I think is really important in here is a chapter on gender diversity and gender affirming care, why that's important. It's just such a comprehensive book, and it not only talks about those subjects in terms of like educating you and helping you to understand them, but it also teaches you like what to do if you're dealing with those situations, how to advocate for yourself, the things that you should be asking about, and is something that I wish more medical professionals, especially OB-GYNs, would read. Then I have River Spirit by Leila Abu Leila. This is the winner of the Caine Prize for African Writing. This book follows an embattled young woman coming of age during the Mahadist War in 19th century Sudan and illuminates the tensions that shape her course between Britain and Sudan, Christianity and Islam, colonizer and colonized. I've heard good things about this book. I haven't seen it in as many places as I would have liked, but I am really looking forward to this. I read a lot of African literature and I really enjoy it, and I'm so excited in this case to see that this book is set in Sudan and written by a Sudanese author. The books that I see frequently here in terms of African literature are books that are set in Nigeria, Ghana, and occasionally in Senegal, so it is nice to see a book that's going to be set in a completely different country. And then I have Perfume and Pain by Anna Dorn. I just recently picked this up from Aardvark Book Club. We have a main character named Astrid Dahl who finds herself back in Sapphic Scribes, the Zoom writers group she co-founded before she was published. She's struggling with writer's block, and to cure herself of writer's block, she starts dating a variety of different women. When actress and influencer Kat Gold wants to adapt Astrid's previous novel for TV, Astrid finally has a chance to resurrect her writing career, but the pressure causes her worst vice to rear its head. So this sounds really interesting. I haven't heard that many reviews about this yet, but I think it's a pretty new release still, so I'm looking forward to checking it out. And then I have Why Fathers Cry at Night by Kwame Alexander. This is a memoir in love poems, letters, recipes, and remembrances. I guess this is a book I probably could have included in my short books book stack because, as you can see, there are a lot of pages in here that are set like a poem or a letter. There are recipes throughout, so this will be a pretty quick read as well. And I'm really excited about this. So I read Alexander's book, The Door of No Return, really enjoyed that. And I'm really curious to see what his memoir is going to have to say. And I am always excited, again, when people include recipes in their memoirs. I may end up doing a vlog of this one as well and cooking some of the recipes from this memoir as I read it, just because I think that's a lot of fun. I love cooking my own recipes, but I think it's also a lot of fun to try out recipes that other people feel really strongly about or that evoke childhood memories. So I'm looking forward to delving into this. I have already seen one in here for his granny's hot buttered rolls, and I'm not a huge baker, but I may just have to try that one out. And then I have Wayward by Amelia Hart. So this was a candidate for the Book of the Year for 2023 from the Book of the Month Club. And because I'm a BFF with Book of the Month, I get one of those nominees for free. In the case of 2023, unfortunately, most of the books that were nominated for Book of the Year are books I was not interested in reading or books I didn't really love. This was the only book that I was actually really excited about. I haven't read it yet, but I've been wanting to read it. And so naturally, this is the one that I got for my free book. Then I have A Spell of Good Things by Ayobami Adebayo. So this is a book that I recently picked up. I did a little mini bookstore crawl here in Las Vegas. A friend of mine visited from Albuquerque. We met at one of the bookstores out there while I was on my trip, and she happened to be visiting Vegas and wanted to check out some of the bookstores here. So we went on a little quick trip to a couple bookstores, and I found this. This is one that I have been wanting to read. So I have read Adebayo's previous book, Stay With Me, quite a few years back. And that was kind of my introduction to African literature. It was one of the first books that I read set in Nigeria, and it was quite the experience for me. So when I heard that Adebayo was coming out with a new book last year, I was really excited. Then it got nominated for the Booker long list, and I was even more excited. I have heard kind of mixed reviews on this, but I think that this is going to be a book that's right up my alley. So this is a dazzling story of modern Nigeria and two families caught in the riptides of wealth, power, romantic obsession, and political corruption. All subjects that are really interesting to me. Again, I enjoyed Adebayo's writing the first time, and I cannot wait to see how she has matured as a writer. Then I have The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. This was a recent Book of the Month selection for me, and this concept sounds so interesting. We have a main character who one night comes home to her flat in London and is greeted by her husband. The only problem is that she's not married and she never had a husband. And then she finds out that there's like some black hole in her attic that is just popping out new husbands. Sounds like it's gonna be funny, interesting, and I can't wait to get into it. I haven't heard a ton of reviews of this, but it sounds like something that could be a lot of fun. Then I have Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. I had this on my radar for a bit. It was a fairly recent Book of the Month selection, like this year sometime. And then I saw a review from Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and he said that this was like just fantastic imagining of AI and bodily autonomy and sentience and all of that. And that this book really made him think about some deep themes. That sounds like my cup of tea. I can't say that I know that much about AI or tech. I am not a super tech savvy person, but that concept really does fascinate me. And I do wonder at what point, robots become sentient and require autonomy. So I think that this will be a book that discusses some really interesting themes. And then I recently picked up a copy of The Underworld: Journeys to the Depths of the Ocean by Susan Casey. So I am a rescue scuba diver. I have dove in like 9 countries. I have about 100 dives so far. I'm just really obsessed about learning more about the ocean. Anytime that I pick up books that are related to like deep sea exploration, I just find them fascinating. And so this sounds like such a good book. I've been hearing rave reviews about it and I'm really excited to delve into it. And then one of my other super heavily anticipated books of the year just released, and I happened to pick up my copy literally the day that it came out. I was doing my book crawl through San Diego for my birthday, and I walked in and I saw the new releases shelf and I was like, oh man, this just dropped today. I'm so excited. And that's Little Rat by Akwaeke Emeze. I have read, I think, everything except one of Emeze's books so far, and I have enjoyed all of them to some degree, some more than others, of course. But I think the thing that I really respect about Emeze's writing is that they always have something important to say. They play with really edgy, thought-provoking topics. They always make you really contemplate the subjects that they're writing about. I just find their writing to be fantastic. I don't even want to read the summary of this because I just want to go in with like a clear and open mind and let this book surprise me. I've heard that this is a little bit more horror-esque, which I am so into horror at the moment. I've been reading a ton of horror in the last month, so I'm here for this. I can't wait to get into this. After I read Mirrored Heavens, this is probably going to be the second book that I pick up. Continuing on with weird and disturbing, I have Lapvona by Ottessa Moshfegh. So myself and Jamie Kate host a book club called the Backlist Book Club. We recently started it, and the focus of that book club is to read books that are over 5 years old. And it's an effort to kind of clear books off of our bookshelves that have been sitting for quite a while. And so last month was our first month, and we read My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. And it was a very interesting experience. So I decided that I kind of wanted to delve into something else of Moshfegh to kind of see how I felt about it. And so I had Lapvona on my shelf and I decided I would give it a try. This is, from what I understand, like a political satire, and it's set in like a little farming village. I have heard that there is some really like gruesome, disturbing stuff in this, and I have heard pretty good reviews of it so far. Not that I've heard a ton of them. I know it's a little bit edgy, subversive, and can be a little bit divisive, but I'm looking forward to reading it. Then I have Anita de Monte Laughs Last by Xochitl Gonzalez. I read her previous book, Ogedai's Dreaming, and I really enjoyed that. In fact, if you see my entire bookshelf in the red section, you'll see Ogedai's Dreaming as one of my display books. So this book was loosely based on the life of a Cuban artist, Ana Mendieta. So Anna was a pretty well-known artist, and then she gets married, and about 18 months after she's married, she falls from the 34th window of her apartment building. There's circumstantial evidence that her husband pushed her, and after he is acquitted, her work kind of disappears into the annals of history. This book isn't specifically about her, but it has a lot of parallels and kind of discusses similar themes. It's been getting really good reviews. I've heard a lot of really positive feedback for this book. I will mention that the family of Ana Mendieta is a little bit upset, not specifically just at this book, but I guess there's also a TV show that's being produced about her life. And, they seem to just want to be involved in the portrayal and the discussion of Ana Mendieta, which seems understandable to me. I'm still gonna read this book and I'm really interested in it, but I am also going to be educating myself on the family and like what that whole situation is. So if you pick this up, you may want to look into that as well. Then I have Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austin. So I was really drawn in by the first paragraph of this description. Enid is obsessed with space. She can tell you about black holes and their ability to spaghettify you without batting an eye in fear. Her one major phobia, bald men, but she tries to keep that under wraps. So I don't know Enid yet, but I feel like we're gonna get along really well. I'm excited to read this. I think this is gonna be funny. I think there's a romance element in it. I love that there is a bunch of interesting facts about space. I'm here for it. Then I have Goodnight Irene by Luis Alberto Urrea. This is a book about donut dollies, and these are the women that provide camaraderie and a taste of home to the soldiers on the front line. It's set in 1943. I have heard really good things about this. I recently read a book called The Women by Kristen Hanna, and that talked about the women serving in Vietnam that are often forgotten in history. This I'm excited to read because it's going to be talking about the women that served in World War II and often, again, are not really thoroughly discussed. I really love the way that this book is designed as well because you have pictures of actual women who are donut dollies on the insides of the covers. Then I have Hard by a Great Forest by Leo Vardaishvili. This is a book that is set in the country of Georgia, and I can't say that I have ever read a book set in Georgia before. This is a mystery where one family member disappears and the rest of the family is kind of following clues and breadcrumbs to try to figure out what happened. I've heard kind of mixed reviews about this. In fact, some of the people that I have very similar reading taste to didn't really care for this book. I'm still gonna give it my own try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't, but I'm hoping that I'll really enjoy it. Another new release that I was super excited about this year is The Lion Women of Tehran by Marjan Kamali. Kamali wrote The Stationery Shop. This is a book that I think almost everyone who has read really enjoyed. It is beautiful writing, really interesting topic, and I expect that this book is going to be equally as good, if not better. This is set in 1950s Tehran, and it is a heartfelt epic new novel of friendship, betrayal, and redemption set against 3 transformative decades in Tehran, Iran. I have really high hopes for this one. I haven't heard as many reviews about it yet because it's still very new. But I thoroughly expect to enjoy it. And my last selection for the month is Real Americans by Rachel Khong. This is described as an exhilarating novel of American identity that spans 3 generations in one family and asks what makes us who we are and how inevitable are our futures. I haven't heard that many reviews of this book yet because I think it's still pretty new, but I did recently see a review from Michelle Lynn Reeds, and she said that this book was not at all what she was expecting, and I don't think that she enjoyed it nearly as much as she had hoped to. But you know, we all have different tastes, so I want to give it a try. I had already purchased it from Book of the Month. I have never read Rachel Khong before, but I have this book, and I also recently picked up Goodbye Vitamin as well. So I'm gonna give this a try, and hopefully this will work a little bit better for me. It sounds really interesting, and I love the cover of this book. So those are all of the things that I have picked out for July. As I mentioned, I also have a couple book club reads, and I have some of the books left for this current round of the BookTube prize. I am reading nonfiction for this round, so I'm excited about that because that's giving me a really good balance of some really interesting nonfiction books. And aside from that, my NetGalley shelf is once again out of control, so I have quite a few ARCs to catch up on NetGalley, so I may sneak in 1 or 2 of those throughout the month as I have time. So those are my reading plans for the month. I'm gonna try and mood read quite a bit. And like I said, I expect to get through a decent amount of these, but not every single thing. I'm just gonna kind of pick what feels good in the moment. So that being said, if you liked the video, hit the thumbs up, comment down below, and let me know what you have planned to read in July. Do you plan out your TBR? Are you gonna mood read? Are there any new releases you're really excited about? Any buddy reads, book clubs? Tell me all of the things. Or if you read any of the books on my TBR and you have opinions, tell me your opinions. Just don't tell me any spoilers, please. But tell me how you felt about the book. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Anything on my TBR that you're really excited to read, you know, just generally come chat books with me. That's why we're all here. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below, as well as the notification bell so that you never miss a video. And that way we can see each other again soon. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.